Hey guys, today's Thursday, so we have a new episode of our book, Runaway Ralph. Yesterday, remember that Ralph got picked up by Garfield and Aunt Jill, and they put him in a cage, but at least he was safe from the cats and the dog, both of those guys. And remember, it kind of made Garf upset because the girls were so interested, and so Aunt Jill had said, we need to be like especially nice to him. So, chapter 4 is called Chum. When Ralph awoke, the camp was dark. Crickets chirped in the weeds outside the craft shop. In the distance, frogs croaked. They were suddenly silent and croaked again. Timidly, Ralph began to investigate his new home. Someone had supplied him with food and water. A piece of paper had been dropped thoughtfully in one corner. Knowing that he was safe from the cat, Ralph nibbled at some dried corn and a leaf lettuce until his stomach was full. Then he shredded the paper, which was somewhat harder to chew than all the Kleenex he enjoyed at the Mountain View Inn, and spread it around his cage before he summoned up enough courage to explore his exercise wheel. Do you know what exercise? It's those things like in gerbil and hamster cages and they run on them. They're kind of cool, I think. Ralph climbed cautiously onto the wheel, which swung back and forth so alarmingly that he jumped off. He ran around his cage, examining every angle. Deciding that the worst that could happen he would fall off, Ralph tried again. This time he stayed on the wheel, and when he became accustomed to the swinging motion, he tried a few cautious steps. The wheel spun pleasantly beneath his feet. Ralph ran faster. The wheel increased its speed. Ralph ran as hard as he could and stopped. To his astonishment, the wheel continued to spin, and Ralph was carried completely around the circle, so that for an instant before he began his descent, he was upside down at the top of the wheel. This ride was fun. When Ralph had coasted to a stop, he began to run around so that he could spin around the full circle once more. Round and round went Ralph as the shadows in the craft shop slowly faded. Spinning on a wheel was as dangerous and as exciting as riding a motorcycle. His motorcycle! Ralph leaped from the wheel to the side of the cage nearest the window. The rays of the rising sun slanted through the bamboo, but no matter how hard Ralph strained his eyes, he could not even catch a glimpse of the red metal or chrome. If only he had some way of knowing that his motorcycle was still hidden beneath the bamboo husk. An alarm clock went off in a lodge nearby, and a boy in rumpled pajamas stumbled out to blow the rousing bugle notes that brought the camp to life. Ralph busied himself scattering his shredded paper about his cage, nibbling his food, and racing on his wheel. While the campers were all in the dining hall eating breakfast, Garf slipped into the craft shop and checked on Ralph's food and water, and slipped out again, so Ralph only had begun to summon his courage to speak. That's funny, Ralph thought. That boy's acting like he's doing something wrong. After breakfast, Aunt Jill and several boys and girls straggled into the craft shop and sat down to make pictures by gluing dried rice, peas, beans, and corns to scraps of plywood. Mosaics, they called him. Such a waste of good food, thought Ralph, recalling some of the hard times he had gone through with his family back at the Mountain View Inn. Those campers were ruining enough food to keep a mouse family healthy for weeks. Before long, the mosaic makers discovered Ralph, who obliged them by racing on his wheel. Hey, look at him do the loop-de-loop, the boy named Pete said. Isn't he darling, said a girl. Apparently, all girls called mice darling, at least mice in cages. Ralph could not resist showing off his loop-de-loop once more, and when many hands pushed bits of the mosaic into the cage, he nibbled greedily. At least there was no scrounging for food at the Happy Acres camp. The next time Garf slipped into the craft shop while everyone else was in the dining room, Ralph gathered his courage to speak. Say, he said in a timid voice, but the boy must not have heard, because at that moment he began to sing uncertainly to himself. Little Rabbit Foo Foo, hopping through the forest, scooping up the field mice and banging them on the head. We used to sing that when my kids were little. Ralph was stunned by the words Garf sang. What kind of boy would sing such a wicked song? Certainly not a boy a mouse could trust. Frightened and disappointed, he scuttled to the farthest corner of his cage and turned his back. And down came the good fairy, and she said, Little Rabbit Foo Foo, I don't want to see you hopping through the forest, scooping up the field mice and banging them on their head. As Ralph sat trembling in his chorus, he listened and was puzzled. Garf, with obvious pleasure, was singing the same words the campers were singing in the dining hall, but the tune was different. When their voices went up, Garf's went down. When their voices went down, Garf's went up. Sometimes his voice did neither, but wavered someplace in the middle. Ralph was bitterly disappointed by the whole turn of events. He was interested in singing. Garf was not interested in motorcycle and speed. He was interested in singing and banging field mice on their heads. The hot summer days droned on. Ralph was supplied with more food he could possibly eat, and his exercise wheel kept him trim. Whatever catso sneaked into the craft shop and showed an interest in Ralph's cage, someone snatched him and shoved him out the door. Life was safe, comfortable, and not unpleasant. From his cage near the window, Ralph had a good view of the camp. To the left, through the bamboo, he could see the boys' lodges. To the right were the girls' lodges. That's like their cabins. Before him lay the dining hall, the camp office, a trampoline, a swimming pool, a circle of benches, and old school desks in front of a platform that held a piano. Off to the right, beyond the shade of the walnut trees, a pasture shimmered in the summer heat. Counselors who were college students, like the summer help at the Mountain View Inn, led the activities of the campers, and one counselor lived in each lodge with 8 or 10 campers. Ralph always found something interesting to watch. Campers spreading their sleeping bags out in the sun to air, counselors leading singing and directing skits around the campfire in the evening, boys racing to be first when the bell was rung to announce the meals, boys and girls in cowboy boots or English riding boots going off towards the barn for riding lessons. Boys and girls played and kittens romped under the walnut trees. Catso discovered a small hole in the craft shop's rusty screen door, which he explored with a paw as if it were a mouse hole, but faithful old Sam always arrived to tell him to move on. Never once did Garf forget to care for Ralph, and when he was not singing in his strange voice, he sometimes spoke. "Hi, little fellow," he would say, as he quickly detached the water bottle from the cage and refilled it at the sink. He even offered Ralph some sunflowers with his fingers. Ralph was so lonely, he was tempted to accept the seed for the sake of companionship. Then he remembered the song about getting banged on the head and retreated to the corner of his cage. One afternoon, when Ralph was particularly lonely, he decided that a boy who fed a mouse 3 times a day could not be so bad after all, and that next time a sunflower seed was offered, he would venture out and accept it from the boy's fingers. However, when Garth finally came, he began to sing again. This time, the song was different from one the campers were singing over the dining hall. It provoked Ralph's curiosity, because he had heard others sing it, but he had been unable to catch the words. The campers never sang this song when Aunt Jill was around, which made Ralph even more curious about the words. He was under the impression that they were not fit for grown-up ears, which of course made the song all the more interesting. Garf sang, and Ralph listened. Great green gobs of greasy gummy gopher guts, simulated monkey feet, chopped up baby parakeets. That was enough for Ralph. Sorry about my singing voice. In his haste to hide, he bumped into the spout of his water bottle and flooded one side of the cage. He found refuge behind a lettuce leaf, where he sat trembling with nerves of fright while he refused to listen to another word of that fearsome song. Why, the next line might be about mice. Ralph stayed hidden behind the leaf for a long, long time. He was now certain that there was no hope of communicating with Garf. Chopped up baby parakeet? Garf actually relished the dreadful words. Then one day, not long after Ralph had concluded that he was doomed to loneliness, a freckled-faced girl wearing a baggy shirt, shorts, and cowboy boots came to the craft shop carrying a cage at least 10 times the size of Ralph's cage. She set it on the back in the nature corner. "Hi, Aunt Jill, I'm back. Here's Chum again," she said. "I brought his box of food and a bag of cedar shavings." Aunt Jill dropped the strands of lanyard that she was demonstrating to hug the girl. "Well, hi, Lana. Welcome back. It's so good to see you. Chum will have a friend this year. One of the boys caught a mouse in a butterfly net." She lifted the big cage onto the shelf right beside Ralph's cage. Ralph sat on his wheel to get a better look at the new occupant of the nature corner, a cranky-looking animal with tan and white fur. Ralph, who had never seen such an animal, watched silently while the creature, whatever it was, shoved and pushed and stomped at the cedar shavings in his cage. He seemed to have difficulty arranging them to his satisfaction. Next, he went through his food dish, picked a small number of green pellets, and shoved them outside his cage. The cedar shavings still did not please him, so he went back to shoving and pushing and stomping. From time to time, he paused to gnaw noisily at the bars of his cage with his long, curving teeth. Finally, when the bell had rung, the campers had gone off for their noon meal. Ralph, in his eagerness for companionship, could no longer remain silent. "What are you, anyway?" he asked. "Some kind of a fancy gopher?" All right, so tomorrow we'll figure out. Be thinking about what you think he might be. I'm betting he's not a fancy gopher, though. So, all right, so tomorrow we'll read some more, see what's happening to our friend Ralph. And I hope you got all your NTI work done today and are going to get a good night's sleep and be ready for tomorrow. Remember, tomorrow's the day to catch up if you haven't caught up on all of your stuff. So have a good evening. Love you guys.